Do you like the idea of breaking into medical writing, but perhaps don't know how to do it? Would you like to hear from someone who's done exactly that? My name's Vicky Sherwood, and you're watching the Biomed Badass Show. Today, I'm going to be talking to one of my former clients who broke into medical writing in a large communications agency just a few months ago. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to her today because we're going to discuss her journey into medical writing and learn a little bit about what she does now as a MedComms writer, to provide you with some insights if you are looking to get into medical writing as well. So if that sounds like you, stay tuned because we're going to have some really useful information. Joe Mattocks, welcome to the Biomed Badass Show. I'd love to start off by just finding out what you've kind of done in the world. What's your backstory before you got into medical writing?
Hi Vicky, thank you for having me. So I've had a bit of a squiggly career, I guess you could call it. So I was always been interested in science. So I was really keen to go back to uni, get my science degree. And I was actually aiming to become a researcher. That was the aim, get a PhD, go into research. And I did exactly that. I got my degree. I went to Edinburgh to do my PhD, and I absolutely hated research with a passion. So there were certain things that I enjoyed. I liked the sort of writing presentations and posters and that side of things, like the more comms side. So I literally just sort of Googled all the bits I enjoyed from research, and then remote jobs, UK, and just see what it kind of threw out. And medical writing was one of the first things it sort of spat out. And yeah, I just read it and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the thing that I'm like, this is so me. It still had that. You could still kind of learn about the interesting science was going on. You could have all that involvement and use all that knowledge that I'd gained from my degrees, but I was getting to do the communication side and the writing, and that's something that I've always really enjoyed. So it was that combination of the two that really appealed to me, and also that you could work remotely was was a real clincher for me as well. So yeah, it was just kind of a bit of an amalgamation of everything that I've done really, and it just kind of went, this is the thing that you've been looking for.
That's really good though, isn't it? That you got to that conclusion quite early.
Mm,
So a lot of us, I think, like you, like the idea of science and research, and then kind of get into it. And maybe there's aspects of it we're not that keen on, but we don't really know what else we're going to do as
mm,
scientists. And then kind of just plow on down
mm,
this kind of one narrow route that ends up in a dead end. Because I
yeah.
often say I'd have loved to have come to the conclusion of finding medical writing much early, but you did really well to come to that conclusion pretty quickly and early on. So I congratulate you for that. You didn't waste too much time
Thank you.
hanging about in labs. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So what was it specifically that interested you in medical writing?
The parts of my degree that I really enjoyed and that was quite surprised how much I enjoyed it was some modules on sort of pharmacology, drug action, how all that interacts, the pharmacokinetics and all that side of things, like how the drugs are actually improving illnesses and what they actually do at that kind of internal level. I found that so fascinating. So to be able to do a job where I'm learning about that and communicating that, and again adding that to that skill set of, science and writing and those things that I really enjoy, that really appealed. Because as I say, I didn't want to be in research, I didn't want to be running clinical trials, but I always found the clinical trials fascinating and understanding why do they think this is going to work and how are they going to try and find out if this is going to work. And it's like, oh great, I can actually be involved in that on a daily basis, learning about new drugs and how they're developing them and all that interesting stuff that I really enjoy, and actually be communicating it and making it useful. I always say research is useless until it's out there in the wild and it's doing something. Like you can do all the amazing research that you want, but if it's just sat in a lab book somewhere doing nothing, then you might as well not have bothered. So I was really interested in being that link between the lab and getting the word out about the research and making it useful and sort of releasing it into the world, and
Mhm.
then people can make their own decisions about it. Like the healthcare professionals can decide, okay, this looks like something that would be useful, or this, okay, I prefer this drug or that drug. And they can make informed decisions, and then they can go on to their patients and help them make informed decisions about the best treatments for them as well. So it's that whole kind of pathway from a developing a drug right through to it being useful for patients. And another thing that really appeals is that like actually benefiting patients' lives. Like I've got people in my family that live with chronic illness. I have a chronic illness myself, and sometimes you can feel a bit lost and alone in that sort of when you're in that. So being able to kind of connect the science with the people that need it, that really appealed to me as well.
That impact piece is so important, isn't it? Because when you're kind of bumbling around in a lab and there's some kind of abstract idea that this might be useful in 10, 20 years' time,
Yeah.
if it discovers anything at all, can get a little bit disheartening, can't it? Because you think, well,
Mm.
what impact am I actually going to have? And to your point about research being stuck in lab books, I wonder how much actually is
Mm.
just not out there, not being, or avenues that are not being pursued for various reasons. To have a career where it can have a direct impact on patients, and it kind of gets you up in the morning.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, from your specific position as well, even more so. And I think the pharma industry as well has moved very much towards involving patients at an earlier stage in the development process as well, the drug development process. So maybe, in the future, that's also an avenue, you can explore with your own experience, lived experience
Yeah.
of that as well. So I think,
And that's
you
something I'd really like to do eventually is kind of get involved in, not heavily, I don't want it to be everything that I do, like writing about like my particular chronic illness, but it'd be something that I'd really like to have some involvement in at some point because I think it's important to kind of give back a little bit as well. Like I've had a lot of really amazing people that have helped me with my chronic illness, so to be able to kind of support other people in the same position would be something I'd really like to do as well.
okay, so talk a little bit more about how you actually broke in then. So you discovered medical writing, and then what were the steps you took to actually make that career materialize?
Yeah, so it was not a massively long journey, but it was maybe a bit longer than I would have liked. So I'd say from kind of finding out that medical writing existed to getting my medical writing position, probably about 2 years. I'm trained as a scientist. My first step was to research and find out kind of what is medical writing? Is it actually kind of what I think it is? Is it something I want to do? Are there many jobs available? Which, when you're in it, seems like a ridiculous question to ask because there's so many people involved.
Mhm.
But from the outside looking in, you're like, well, where on earth are all these jobs? So finding out if it was a viable option, and just doing all that initial sort of research. And then the next step really was to start talking to people. So one of my former lecturers at uni, I discovered he'd become a medical writer, so I rescheduled an informational interview with him and had a chat with him. I used resources like First MedComms Job and Pharma Web and all these different medical writing communities. But with them, I also engaged with Eleanor Steele, who's the MedComms mentor. She's amazing. She's got some fantastic resources. So I used some of her resources. And that was my initial kind of thing, just finding out more, speaking to people, kind of getting to understand how it worked. And then the next step was start looking for jobs. And I was applying for medical writing jobs and I just wasn't really getting anywhere with it. But then I'd been in Edinburgh and me and my husband moved back down to Yorkshire, where we're from. You can probably tell from the accent. We moved back down to Yorkshire. I actually found a scientific writer position. So it wasn't medical writing per se, it was scientific writing, but it still gave me that experience of client work and managing multiple projects and how to structure a piece of writing for because obviously I was used to academic writing, but it's a different thing. So writing sort of more technical reports and editing, formatting, going through rounds of review, going through QC, all these different processes that you don't really realize are part of the job until you get into it.
Mhm.
So it gave me that experience, and then after 9 months, 10 months at that company, I was like, right, I feel like I'm sort of ready to get back into that search now. And I'd been subscribed to your email, Biomed Badass, for a while. And you put out an email saying, like, are you interested in breaking into MedComms? Do you want to have a discovery call? And so I'm like, yes, please. Speak to me, help me.
It hit you at the right time by the sounds of it, that
Yeah,
email.
it really did. It was like, oh my goodness, this is sort of meant to be. So yeah, so we had that discovery call, and yeah, it just sort of opened my eyes. Like, you just kind of talked me through like how you could help, and sort of sort of talked about how we could, like, different steps we could go through to kind of give me a more targeted search and improve my sort of CVs and applications and how that would all work. And it sort of kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, yeah, this is something that could be really valuable. So yeah, I took the plunge, did your coaching course, and I think it was by the last session I got an interview already, and I'd got two interviews, I think, and yeah, I literally got a job within about a week of finishing with this, so it works.
Yeah, I remember that at the end, wasn't it? It was like a flurry of
Yeah, because I
you
think we've had to kind of like budge a couple of calls up to like I don't record interview. I've got to get some stuff done.
well, you did all the groundwork in terms of, the coaching that we did. You went through all the networking steps and
Yeah,
everything that we discussed, and suddenly opportunity doors started to open, didn't they, all
yeah,
at
yeah,
once?
yeah.
Mm. And
Really.
then then in came the offer.
Yeah.
So fantastic. And I remember when you first reached out to me through that email, and then we were looking at your LinkedIn profile as
Mhm.
part of the coaching. I tend to do a bit of stalking of people that I start working with. Your LinkedIn profile, and you still have it. Your banner is like your glasses,
Yeah,
your is it your initials next to it? I seem to
yeah,
it's like bright yellow, and I was like, wow, you've got that screams like creative edge, and that can be a real advantage as well in medical communications, medical writing. So I thought, oh wow, you're going to be great to work with, and you know what, you were. So yeah,
Phew.
you still have that banner, Joe.
I do, yeah. I
Yeah,
really like it. Like, I like my glasses. It's one of the few things I quite like. It's my
it's, it,
glasses.
it stuck out to me because it's like one of the banners that I remember vividly. And then obviously met you on the call, and you've got the glasses. Like, aha, there we go.
Yeah.
It worked really well. So maybe I'll share that link so people can look at your LinkedIn profile and see what I'm talking about.
I think it's a lot of the two Ronnies from when I was a kid. I like the glasses.
So fast forwarding to now, then. So
Mm,
through that process, obviously you did great, broke in. You're
mhm.
working in a large MedComms agency now. So
Yep.
just talk us a little bit through the work that you do, what it's like kind of day to day, not any of the details of the projects you're working on or who you're working with, but
Yeah.
just more generally.
I do so much. So I do a sort of various projects between publications and medical affairs. I've done a lot more medical affairs than publications, and I do really I enjoy both, but I really love the medical affairs stuff. That's like my favorite because it is that more creative
Mhm.
side, and that's what really appealed to me about being in the job, like combining science and creativity. So I've done a real range of things. I've done abstracts, posters. I've done apps. I've done like Q&As for like people to use to like talk to HCPs at Congress. Just a huge variety of things. I've been involved in developing manuscripts, and yeah, there's just so much done. There's probably a million other things that I've done as well, but and it was really nice to get involved, like pretty much within my first week I was getting projects, and it was great to have that kind of trust from my team that they're like, okay, we're gonna kind of just throw you in the deep end and show us what you've got. And they kept giving me projects, so I must have done okay.
Well, that's great. I mean, you've only been in the industry for what, 6 months, maybe? Something like
Four.
that. Oh, even less.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So not many months at all.
Mm.
And to have that amount of exposure to so many different, well, it shows one, this trust, but also, what a great start for your career. Because
Yeah.
already you're starting to piece out like what areas of MedComms that you would enjoy the most? It's always a piece of advice that I give to people about when you get into your career,
Yeah.
kind of say yes to as many things as you can, because you don't know what you don't know, right? If you haven't tried something, you don't know if you like it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, what an opportunity.
Mm.
Fantastic. So day to day then, your day to day work, you work remotely, do you?
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, I'm fully remote. There are offices we can go to, but they're all quite away from me. I kind of live out in the sticks, so but I'm quite happy working remotely, and most people in my team do a mixture of the two,
mhm,
mostly remote, and then they might do a day or two in the office. So it works really well. They're really designed for working remotely. So yeah, it's never been like an issue or a sticking point. I've never felt like, oh, I should be going into the office, really. I've been in remote jobs before. I'm like, feel like I probably should be going into the office, but I've never felt that kind of pressure, which is nice.
mhm.
It's a job that really lends itself to remote working. So yeah, I'm really happy with kind of how it works. Um,
And
yeah.
you haven't had any problems with the onboarding? It's been quite straightforward remotely.
Yeah, it's worked really well. Like I said, they're designed for like the setup for remote working, and it's an international company. So there's people from the UK, the US, Canada. It's really global. So they have to be able to work remotely because teams might be working across different time zones. So it has to be set up to run smoothly in a remote environment because, if you're working with somebody in Canada, then it's not like you can just like pop over to the desk and see them. It has to work smoothly. I mean, it'd be quite nice. Go see so and so in Canada. Oh yes, please. Uh, um, so yeah, it works really well. And it's just a case of, trying to keep in communication with people, emails, Teams, video calls, um, and just checking in. And my team are really good at checking in with me. I'm getting better at checking in with them. Um, I have a real sort of thing about can't ask for help, can't ask for help, and I'm getting much better. And that's because I've got a really supportive team around me who are really encouraging and really supportive of me asking questions. And no question is too small, no question is silly. It's we they appreciate that I'm new and I'm learning, and they really support that. So yeah, it's going very well.
That's awesome. Sounds like you're in a really nurturing and supportive team
Mm,
environment, which is
yeah,
fantastic,
yeah.
especially when you're starting out.
Mm,
Um, I'm just getting back thinking around the remote working and how different that was, because I broke into the industry, nearly a decade ago now. And
mhm,
pre-COVID, it was very much you have to come into the office,
mm,
particularly when you're starting out to kind
yeah,
of learn from senior writer. That was kind of how it was set up,
yeah,
which was fine. Um, Only I'd go into London, central London, every day on the train. And for a large period of that work, my line manager was in the States, so she wouldn't be logging on till midday. And I'd be like, right, okay, so I'm in the office. It's nice. I'm shooting the breeze, having a coffee with people, going out for lunch in central London. Fantastic. But do I really need to be here?
yeah, yeah,
And that's the question. I think the industry, obviously, when COVID hit, had to take that full turn. To be fair, before COVID, a lot of people were working remotely, certainly in senior positions. A few people in my team would come into that central London office maybe once every quarter,
yeah,
a little bit more regularly. So, but then, after COVID, then it really did, you know, all the ducks got into a row and then realized they could onboard people and train people quite easily remotely
yeah.
as well. It just wasn't a necessity, really. Fantastic. It's so lovely to hear that, you're going from strength to strength with your career, Joe. Really, really exciting. I've been watching this space to see what happens next. So maybe just before we sign off and finish, because I think
Yeah.
the insights have been fantastic, have you
Mhm.
got any advice or anything specific that you learned during your own transition process into medical writing that you could
Mhm.
advise others who are maybe looking to achieve the same?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is do your research, like find out what the job entails, because I think when I've spoken to other people that it's not quite what they're expecting. And it's for me, I kind of knew what I was getting myself into, and even then it's been a massive learning curve. So you've got to really kind of understand the job, understand what it means, and also if you decide once you've done your research, medical writing isn't the right thing, but you're still interested in the industry, like go and find out about the different roles that are involved as well, because there's all sorts of other things like client services and studio and various other parts that are really crucial to the medical communications industry but aren't specifically writing. So do your research and find out what's the right area for you, I think is really important. The other thing is like sort of lean on people, like try and find out as much as you can from people who are already in the business. So like I said, I spoke with people, I had informational interviews. I went to first MedComms job, had like a conference that had like various companies there to talk about the industry, and you could talk to them about the companies, and there are also various seminars and things that you could attend to find out more. So definitely like go and speak to people and understand the industry, because from the outside looking in, it does feel a bit like of an impenetrable fortress sometimes. And you're like, how do I find my way in? Like, how do I find out anything about this? So trying to find people to speak to, understand the industry and who are involved, and make those connections, and they might point you in the direction of another person or a particular resource that you wouldn't have found on your own, and that can be really useful. So I think that's a really important thing, is to like speak to people who are involved and really get to understand it and start to make those connections. And then the last thing I'd say is find some people who can sort of support you through your journey. And that can be your family and your friends, because like I said, it took me a couple of years, a bit longer than maybe I'd want to. And sometimes just like, "Oh, forget it, I'll just throw in the towel, I'm just gonna go work at Tesco." So find people who you can kind of vent your frustration to, and who can keep cheerleading you and keeping you going, is really important. And I did say that was the last thing, but also like trying to get some writing experience, whatever it may be. So I was really fortunate. I found like a sort of medical writer adjacent job, but I had writing experience from academia. Like I said, I've done posters, I've done slide decks, I've done obviously plenty of reports and things like that. But also just writing for yourself, just to like develop your writing skills and your editing skills, and making sure you're writing concisely and clearly, and just practicing how to write is really important. So whether it's like you do a blog or it's LinkedIn posts or whatever it might be, yeah, just find ways to write and practice. I think is really important as well. And you can include those things on a CV and show that you've actually got that practical experience, whether it's paid or not. It's all experience, which is really important for those applications.
I really, really like the idea of doing your research up front, because I think, the idea of being a medical writer and working remotely and doing all this, exciting, cutting edge kind of working on clinical research, working with some of the top, pharma companies in the world, is all very exciting and glitzy, or at least sounds it. Are you actually going to enjoy the day job of what it involves?
Yeah.
And as you said, are there other options, maybe like editorial positions, project management positions, client services, as you said, might be a better fit? And in fact, I've worked with clients before who've come to me because they want to get into medical writing. As we've gone through and discussed the different roles in MedComms, I've maybe decided, actually, no, I'd prefer client services, or I prefer editorial. And I've gone off and explored those roles and broken into MedComms in that way, in a different way. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic thing to point out, that just because you like the sound of medical writing, really you've got to understand what the job entails.
Yeah.
To know if you'd like it. Well, Jo, that has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. You've added lots and lots of value, lots of insights there. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And I'm sure others will be really appreciative of all that value that you've shared there on breaking into medical writing. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.